So welcome everybody to our third annual Gather Around Local Food. Today's a day of online talks and live streams where we'll be hearing about the value local food can add to different parts of our lives. I'm Stuart Gajinski and with my colleague here, Steffi Stapleton-Barnes from Forth Environment Link. FEL's Regional Food Hubs project supports organisations in rural parts of Scotland to deliver click and collect markets for local food. We're funded by Leader in Perth and Kinross, Fife, Scottish Borders and Forth Valley and Lomond. If you like today's session, please follow Forth Environment Link's social media for news of more events and other climate actions. Before I introduce our speakers this morning, I want to just remind you again that this session is being recorded and you can catch it on FEL's YouTube channel, where you can also find recorded sessions from last year's events if you're interested in any of those. Now, we've been partnering with NeighbourFood as a tech platform to make it easier to build local food networks and to connect producers and customers directly. Localising our food is a powerful way to come together as communities and to feel more connected to our food. As a climate action, it reduces the distances that food travels to us and the distances that we need to travel to shop for nutritious food. So food is perhaps one of the simpler examples, perhaps, of the goods and services that we can localise within a 20-minute neighbourhood. That is a neighbourhood where most of our daily needs can be met within a 20-minute round trip on foot or by bicycle. And it's a concept that the Scottish Government gives its support to in its programme for government, and something that cities and regions around the globe are looking at. On the face of it, it might be an ambitious and game-changing strategy, but if COVID has shown us one thing, it is that many of us can continue to live, work, and get outdoors without jumping in our cars every day or having to regularly travel very far from home. With us this morning, I'm absolutely delighted to say our FEL's Executive Director, Clara Walker, who will share how FEL and its partners can support delivery of Scottish Government's objective for 20-minute neighbourhoods in Scotland. And we'll also be hearing from Ruth Glasgow from social enterprise and community interest group, the Hub G63, who have not only created a web of NeighbourFood collection points to increase access to local food within just a short distance of homes in surrounding villages, but are putting a sustainable food system at the heart of their home village of Drimmen through their Grow Garden project and their Zero Waste Village shop. So we're going to kick off with a short video which just introduces the concept of 20-minute neighbourhoods or 15-minute cities. There's various names for it, but they're largely the same idea. And then we'll hear from both Clara first and then Ruth, and we'll have time for a Q&A session at the end. But please feel free to use the chat box to tell us who you are and your comment or question at any time during the presentations, and we will pick them up. Now. Just bear with me.
Before the recent lockdowns around the world, we led hectic lives with long commutes and not enough time to spend with our families and friends. Traffic polluted our air and smog blanketed our skylines.
What if it could be different? What if we could create a new normal where we reclaim our time, our health and well-being, and our communities?
This is the idea behind the 15-minute city, a growing movement to make our lives in cities more convenient, less communities are safe and inclusive, where the air is clean.
A 15-minute city is one where it's easy to get goods and services. Fresh groceries, healthcare, and other amenities are all just a short trip away. A 15-minute city is one where everyone has a place.
A 15-minute city has affordable, accessible, and adaptable housing for households of all sizes and ages.
A 15-minute city means that you can work close to home or work remotely more often.
And we all play a role in our neighborhood.
What if we don't go back to life as it was? What if we already have the power to change how we live? Together, we can reimagine and create the future we want. One that is cleaner, safer, healthier, and more inclusive, and gives us back valuable time to enjoy the little things.
Now, hopefully you caught that video and technology worked for us. If you didn't, for any reason, I can send you the link to it if you'd like to see it. So just drop me a note in the chat box. But now I'm going to hand over to Clara Walker. Thank you, Clara.
Thank you, Stuart. Give me a second and I will try and share. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm just going to add in that I live opposite the school in the village and it's sports day today and the head teacher has just fired up the loud hailer. So I apologise for any noise in the background. Okay, let me see. Can you see this? Okay, brilliant. Okay. Okay, my name's Clara, as Stuart said, from FEL. I'm going to start off by saying I am in no way an expert on 20-minute neighbourhoods, but I am going to put it into context for you today before I hand over to Ruth, who is going to beautifully illustrate and demonstrate 20-minute neighbourhoods in practice later on. And what I would say to start off is that FEL, we've been working on the principles of 20-minute neighbourhoods probably since we started about 20 years ago. So we encourage everyday cycling and walking. We support local food to be grown and eaten in our communities, and we enhance people's skills about keeping the items that we have in circulation for longer. So I think we really work towards 20-minute neighbourhoods without necessarily understanding that that's what we were doing in the past. So I really welcome this. So I just wanted to cover off the little video that you've seen there perfectly sort of sums up what a 20-minute neighbourhood is. But this is the Scottish Government definition of a 20-minute neighbourhood. So it's places that are designed so that people can meet their day-to-day needs within a 20-minute walk from their home through access to safe walking and cycling routes. So the idea originated in Portland in Oregon. It was part of their climate action plan. It was quite quickly taken up by Melbourne in Australia, and I think if anybody's really interested in 20-minute neighbourhoods, have a look at what Melbourne have done. They've got fantastic resources. They've piloted it in 3 different suburbs around the area. Well worth having a look at. It was primarily designed as a planning tool to create more livable communities, but it's really been adopted by Scottish Government in the last couple of years. As Stuart said, it forms part of the programme for government. It's now mentioned in the National Planning Framework Statement of Intent, so it's really being woven into the fabric of investment going forward. But it's all about creating livable places where the pedestrian is king. So why 20-minute neighbourhoods? Why would we want to deliver this? I think research has shown that the maximum distance that anybody wants to travel to get the things that they need is 20 minutes. It's 800 metres or half a mile. So everything is kind of focused around that distance and nothing more. But why would we want to do it? So again, Scottish Government have focused on 4 different pillars: improving the local economy, climate action, obviously increasingly and will be increasingly important, decreasing health inequalities and improved livability or quality of life. We definitely saw that during the pandemic how important local systems were to people, how we access green space, the availability of local food. These were propelled to the front line in terms of our community defences, Indirectly, we saw the benefits to our environment as we shopped local, we walked more, we drove less. So we were far more connected into our communities, and being able to live and work closer to home then has a direct impact on how we feel and the value that we put on our own communities. So you can understand why, as a concept, it's gaining traction. So a little bit of looking at how we do this. This illustration probably isn't showing up very well, so I apologise. But basically, there are a number of features that make up a 20-minute neighbourhood. So diversity and, I would say, density of affordable homes, well-connected cycling and walking infrastructure, so it's easy to get around, schools and education at the very heart of the community, good green spaces, but in places where everybody can access them regardless of age. Local food is produced within the neighbourhood, making communities resilient and sustainable. That jobs and money are kept locally, so we shop and we work and we stay, so the pound stays within the local community. That there's a decentralisation of health and wellbeing services within the local community, and it's a place for all ages. So how do we do it? Improve, first of all, walking and cycling infrastructure. So, and that includes reallocating street space to pedestrians and cyclists. Create complete neighbourhoods by decentralising core services and developing a really blended mix of social and functional use of buildings. So that means making sure that local shops are selling fresh food in all neighbourhoods, ensuring that critical public services, infrastructure and green space developments are accessible to everybody, and definitely building and developing more affordable houses. It's also about implementing measures that allow complete neighbourhoods to thrive. And we've seen that during COVID. It's about how we use and reuse buildings, encouraging flexible use of community assets and buildings and public spaces. And also, as we've seen during COVID, encouraging home and remote working and the digitisation of services. And I think NeighbourFood is an absolutely perfect illustration of that in practice. So those are some of the things in terms of the how. I think we can't look at it without looking at it through the lens of COVID and what COVID has meant for local systems. Some beautiful pictures here of the NeighbourFood markets across the country that have sprung up during the last 15 months. So the World Economic Forum has advised countries and consumers of the post-COVID need to support local food systems with shorter, fairer and cleaner supply chains that address local priorities. So what has COVID taught us? It taught us that well-connected local areas in lockdown, they gave us a glimpse of a future where clean air, safer, more inclusive communities came to the fore. It showed us that the way we shop has changed. Early into lockdown, some 3 million people either ordered food locally for the first time or joined a scheme to get fresh vegetables delivered locally. Projects have sprung up across communities to serve families who were struggling to get any food at all. So communities have really come together in a time of need. We know that during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, NeighbourFood demand increased by 400 to 500%, coupled with an increased need to support new and emerging markets. And I think what that really tells us is that during COVID, the local food system really came into its own to serve the needs of local people and communities. And I think we know that the potential was always there, but the crisis showcased what the local food system can really do. The local food system also demonstrated that they're really agile, they're responsive, they're adaptable, and they're unhindered by the complex international supply chains. and the vulnerabilities of just-in-time delivery systems that we see from the big supermarkets. So as we consider our options in a post-COVID world, if we get to a post-COVID world, and employers allow their employees to work at home more on a regular basis, there are definitely signs that sourcing local food will potentially become the new normal for many people. So I just wanted to talk very quickly about what FEL has done in terms of supporting 20-minute neighbourhoods. And this is by no means everything that we've done, and it's very COVID specific. We've always worked to the principles of 20-minute neighbourhoods, as I said earlier on, but we haven't perhaps seen it in those terms. And I think probably the best way that I can describe, it's almost like 20-minute neighbourhoods are, it's almost like a beehive. All of these little pockets of perfection that come together to make this really thriving area. And I think in a lot of senses we're delivering a lot of the concepts of 20-minute neighbourhoods, but we don't have all of the different jigsaw pieces together. So during the pandemic, everything that the FEL did was about supporting local systems, supporting local people to keep moving within their community. So we did that in a number of different ways. We transferred our electric bike fleet over to NHS key workers and supermarket key workers, people who needed to get to work. So we had over 100 key workers with long-term access to electric bikes. We serviced over 500 bikes to keep them on the road, to keep people feeling safe. We took over 1,000 calls from people looking to cycle and walk more, because active travel became so much an important part of how people moved within their community. This then opens up the conversations that we need around how we keep people moving and how we keep that sustained in the longer term. We've been developing a number of pilot projects, including with NeighbourFood, about giving access to our electric cargo bikes. And we've got a range of different pilots being supported in universities and neighbourhood markets with emergency food providers. We have 6 GP practices on our waiting list to use an e-cargo bike. And I think that really beautifully demonstrates that people are changing the way they think around how they move within their community and how they demonstrate how you can move within a community. For people who didn't have access to outdoor space during the pandemic, we created tiny little veg or ledge boxes that could grow everything that you needed from a veg kit in your windowsill. And we delivered over 300 of those to families in need across Forth Valley. We developed wraparound care packages for people to keep them feeling supported on their bike, showing them routes of how they could move around. As you know, Stuart and Steffi have been working tirelessly to support the local food market development through NeighbourFood, responding quickly to local needs and drawing that kind of network of climate action support in to find solutions to local challenges. And we also recognise that the community food support that emerged during the pandemic, some of it was out of desperation and emergency. And many of that isn't likely to diminish in the short to medium term, and the groups who have emerged to support that need help to reconfigure and transition from an emergency response to a more sustainable model of support. And we're working really closely with NHS Forth Valley on a local food systems needs assessment, which will help shape the future work in the context of COVID, climate action, but critically 20-minute neighbourhoods. And I think, as I said, part of the issue is that for many of us, we're delivering aspects of the 20-minute neighbourhood, but perhaps without realising or recognising that we're doing it. So I wanted to finish off really with talking about a case study that emerged during, and that's not terribly clear, sorry. Falkirk Delivers is the business improvement district in Falkirk Town Centre regeneration initiative. And at the height of the pandemic, they realised what a massive impact the businesses in the high street and the town centre were facing but also the residents within the town centre who were shielding and unable to actually get in to access the shops. Falkirk has an unemployment level in excess of 25%. There was a huge reduction in footfall in the high street, and the aim was to target town centre businesses to support them, but in a way that was a low carbon solution, and was not encouraging more traffic into the town centre. So the idea was a Falkirk primed. It's based on what consumers were already accepting of Amazon Prime, next day delivery. And we worked closely with them to secure the funding. And the funding is for an officer to develop the Falkirk primed model and an e-cargo bike that would help do the collections and deliveries within a 5-mile radius of the town centre. So I think nobody expected the success of the project. I'll move on. That's us. But there are now 30 businesses participating in the Falkirk primed model. They have done, since they started in November, 4,000 deliveries, so that's around about 50 a day. They have saved over 30,000 non-essential miles saved within the town centre, which has the indirect benefits of cleaner air, a better area for people locally to move around in the town centre. And local businesses are estimating that they've saved around about £100,000 to businesses themselves. Demand is already greater than staff capacity and resources. And the little quote there is from one of the businesses to say that they wouldn't have survived without the local delivery service. And I think it's really indicative of the change that we have seen around having to adapt, but also wanting to adapt to a low carbon solution, but also something that is recognisable for people. So I can't talk about this without saying there are inevitably challenges to delivering 20-minute neighbourhoods. The capacity of local authorities, obviously, to deliver, they're already stretched, they're already underfunded. So there is a capacity issue there. There is an element of policy enforcement and uncertainty. This is a policy intention, but there is nothing mandatory about implementing 20-minute neighbourhoods. So I think until there is more definite policy move, it may be more of a slow burn. There's always going to be that dynamic between the challenges of recognising what urban communities and rural communities need. And rural communities, and I think as Ruth's going to talk about, are in many cases already delivering a lot of the elements of 20-minute neighbourhoods, but perhaps without the support mechanisms in place. The issue around funding, how you retrofit existing buildings to meet new community needs, or you balance that up with new build needs. Ultimately, any changes that take place, particularly around walking and cycling, involve behaviour change. So we need to look at how we support that. And then when you make improvements to communities, there is the risk of gentrification and risking prices, which then price out the people who you want to welcome and encourage into the community. And with anything to do with new initiatives, there is always the risk of new measure pushback, particularly around active travel. So, but I think hopefully what we have seen during the pandemic is that the benefits of 20-minute neighbourhoods within a climate context, within a health and wellbeing context, within a local economy context, absolutely outweigh any of the risks. And I think COVID has absolutely made communities rethink what local means to them. And the idea now of a 20-minute neighbourhood somehow feels far more achievable than it did 18 months ago. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, the concept of 20-minute neighbourhoods. There are, I think, opportunities to talk later on around some of the funding opportunities, some of the other ideas and concepts that have come out, over the last 15 months, and hopefully we can do that. But Stuart, that's me, and I think, do you want me to hand over to Ruth?
Yeah, let's go straight over to Ruth. If you want to stop sharing there, Clara, and we'll move across to Ruth. Thank you, that was fascinating. I'm sure there'll be some points and questions at the end. Ruth, are you ready?
I am, yes. I've just realised that my name doesn't appear. It says staff because I've obviously logged into the wrong bit of the laptop. My name is Ruth Glasgow, and I'm going to talk about the Hub G63 and how we contribute, I guess, to 20-minute living. I'll try not to, I keep saying NeighbourFood instead of Neighbourhood because I'm so used to saying NeighbourFood. So I'll try not to keep making that mistake. Also, just to let you know, I've got a bit of a cough. It's not COVID, so I might have to stop to cough occasionally. And I have a child at home who might barge into the room at any moment. So now you're all aware of that, I shall start. This is, I guess, the perfect presentation topic for the Hub G63 because the whole driving thought behind setting it up was to make sustainable living more accessible to the rural community that I live in, which is West Rural Stirlingshire. It borders West Dunbartonshire, actually. So I've been involved in the Stirlingshire local food network circuit, I guess, for many years. Thanks to Harvey, back when I had a cafe, and every step of the way, this is just a side note here, but every step of the way, FEL have been there, offering more and more opportunities. So thank you for that. Yeah, so I've been involved in the Stirlingshire local food network for many years, and I always found it quite tricky to find the time to travel to Stirling for the meetings that were happening or workshops that I wanted to attend. And added to that, I was also, acutely aware that I was driving 40 minutes in the name of sustainability and in the name of climate action, and that didn't make sense. So that's, I guess, as Clara said, we, the Hub, have also been working towards 20-minute neighbourhood living from the beginning, even before that phrase was there. So in 2018, when I set up the Hub, myself and a few others would meet in my living room or a local cafe, a local restaurant, and eat lots of yummy food whilst we talked about what we could do. But almost every single cafe, and my house, in fact, is an old building and it's got really thick walls. And so even though free Wi-Fi is advertised, you have to sit in a particular corner at a particular table and hold your phone up at a particular angle to get that Wi-Fi, which is why it was amazing when the Drimmen Business Hub was set up. Now, we can't claim that, that's not us, it's a different hub, but it's a business hub which has hot desking, Wi-Fi, and we actually have had a few meetings there with Steffi and Stuart. So that's a really valuable asset to our community, which just further enables 20-minute neighbourhood living. So back to the Hub G63, which is essentially a food and sustainability hub. That's what we call it. And our logo says food, community, sustainability, which really sums up everything that we're all about. And as I said, the main aim was to bring resources and opportunities to this rural community to support the community members and households in sustainable living. Opportunities that you would normally find concentrated in urban areas, which are much further than 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half a mile away from us. The first thing we did was set up a community garden by partnering with the local football club in Drimmen. So we have a bit of the football club land next to the pitch. We use their football hut and their water and toilet facilities, etc. So we also host workshops there, and we I guess it's skills sharing and upskilling the community members to be more confident in growing food, and also grow food with the community, which further builds the community, I think. We had our first workshops there the past 2 weekends, actually. We had a potato tower building workshop and an introduction to permaculture workshop. Both were, I say, well attended. We had the 8 people that were allowed to gather outside. So that's the first thing we did as the hub. And we had planned to start selling zero waste, packaging free food on Stirling NeighbourFood. And then the opportunity came up to actually be supported by FEL to set up our own NeighbourFood market here. So we set up NeighbourFood Balfron, which very quickly became, it had 3 collection points. So Balfron is the main one, and we set up our own satellite collection points in Drimmen and one in Aberfoyle. So it's like you know, we're facilitating this network, facilitating and we're like linking the chain of this network of other 20-minute neighbourhoods. But you know, that, you know, we were never thinking 20-minute neighbourhoods when we were doing all of this. Sorry, somebody else talking, sorry. And actually the Aberfoyle collection point, every fortnight there's a group of people from Brigaturk that come down to get their shopping. So they all order and one person collects everybody's orders. So we kind of, you know, it's not really another collection point, but it's just another, it's the reach of the network, I guess, of 20-minute neighbourhoods. So that was the second thing we did. We set up the community garden, and then we set up NeighbourFood Balfron, and we had always had plans to open our own zero waste food shop, and we found our premises, and we were very lucky to get funding from First Port to kit out that shop, and we were just getting ready to move in, and then March 2020 happened, and we all know what happened in March 2020. So amidst the panic and the confusion and people being stuck at home, not being able to travel, empty shelves in the supermarkets, no delivery slots available from the supermarkets, we were able to just jump into action. You know, it's like people were forced into 20-minute neighbourhood living. It's now become a choice. People want to do it, but you know, just a year and a half ago, people were forced into that, and we were perfectly situated to just fill the gaps. We could secure food, we could deliver to people that were self-isolating. We linked up with the local COVID-19 response group, and so, you know, for people that were receiving emergency food parcels. And we opened a 4th collection point for NeighbourFood as well in Killearn. And all the while we're utilising village halls, church halls, other shops, you know, people offering locations and their time for volunteering. Something that Clara said struck me actually about 20-minute neighbourhoods and everybody having a place in them. And we had so many people offering their time to volunteer with us in the gardens and in NeighbourFood. And so we were able to offer our services, but we were also able to offer just giving people a little bit more purpose whilst they were just suddenly finding themselves with nothing to do. All of the structure from their lives had gone. So we were able to offer that as well, which was so lovely. And in the community garden in Drimmen, obviously all of the big community days we had planned couldn't happen, but we got loads, maybe not loads, 12, 13 families who just took on the garden a week at a time. So that was, yeah, just offering, everybody's got a place. There's a thing for everybody to do within a 20-minute neighbourhood, I think. So that's, yeah, it was just really lovely to see that we were obviously recognised and needed as a community organisation when COVID hit. And in fact, our sales jumped from 600 a week to 1,200, and then several weeks at 4,000 a week, and then it's settled and it's still at about 2,500 a week on our NeighbourFood market. And all of that money stays in the local community, the local food network, and it's showed people that they can have a local lifestyle, and it's highlighted community. So there's this sense of community leading to the 20-minute neighbourhood living, but also the 20-minute neighbourhood then strengthens that community. So it's a lovely cycle, a positive cycle, I think. Also during lockdown, we then opened the shop in April 2020 offering zero waste food. And for the first time we had a kind of physical community hub that people could come to and see what we were doing and talk to us. And then we were really lucky to get more funding from CSGN, Central Scotland Green Network, to develop a second growing site in Kildare. So that's again more accessible to people at that side of our rural community. And we employed 2 grow ambassadors to help engage the community across the 2 sites. And the reason I'm mentioning that funding there is because I think it's just recognizing that there's a lot of grassroots movements, and we can never have this 20-minute neighbourhood, I don't think, without the grassroots. But the top-down funding, the help we've had from top down has been essential as well, and enabled us to do it a lot faster than we would have if we were doing it all from scratch ourselves. So we have the 2 growing sites, we have our zero waste shop, we have our NeighbourFood market with 4/5 collection points, and we also now, obviously, with all of these spaces of our own, we can offer workshops. We can gather people together to talk about community, to build community through food, etc. And we think of it in terms of like an ultra local food system. So, which is, it's the same concept, it's the same idea as this 20-minute neighbourhood, because you can't have a 20-minute neighbourhood if you don't have an ultra local food system, I think, in my opinion, anyway. So I've lost my place, hang on a second. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And it does, I believe in that, but that also it takes a village to support people. Yeah, and this 20-minute neighbourhood concept, I just think that's a nice tagline that goes along with it. It does take a village to raise a child, but it's not just children, important as they are, and lovely as they are. It's, we really do need a village. We need a community to support all people and to give everybody a place in that community. And one of our directors said just a few weeks ago that she can now get everything she needs for her weekly shop from our NeighbourFood and the local butcher, because there's obviously some other meat she wants. So for her, actually, from her house, it's a 10-minute neighbourhood, although she does have to drive. So we are in a rural community, so it's harder to walk to all of these different places. Sometimes if you're out of the village, you do need to take your car, but it's a 10-minute round trip for her in the car. That said, I think that we could all agree that even a 20-minute neighbourhood is a massive accomplishment, even if it's not 10 minutes. So that's my ramblings. Thank you all.
Ruth, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can I just give you a minute or two extra, just because I want to let everyone know about the difference between the 2 growing spaces and your recent crowdfunder as well. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we had a crowdfunder, I can't remember how long ago now, and we surpassed our target. I think we wanted 5,000 and we got about 7.5. So that was for the Kildare site specifically, and that the differences between the 2 sites, the Drimmen Community Garden is within a village, and it's next to the football pitch, so people are walking through all the time. So we kind of have to treat it slightly differently and keep it a little bit neater and tidier. But the idea behind that, the Drimmen Community Garden, is that people can come along, they can do 10 minutes of weeding as they walk through, walking their dog, and we're trying to get people to contribute what they can and take what they need from that garden. So people can just harvest food if they want to, and then we distribute any excess through the shop. The Kildare site is just outside Kildare, but it is on quite well, it's on a 60 limit road, so it's not that safe to walk along that road to get to it. And actually, which is quite relevant, there's a community group in Kildare at the moment trying to make a walkway, so you can walk, I think, from Balfron all the way around to Killearn, and it would go through the garden essentially. So that makes it a hell of a lot more accessible to people. I mean, it would only be a 5-minute walk from Killearn, but along that busy road, schools and nurseries aren't going to want to walk groups of children to the garden. And we do want to bring people in to, and we've had lots of volunteer groups already coming along, but we do want to make it more accessible to children and more, and well, any community group really. So there's this kind of battle going on between certain people and landowners as to whether or not this walkway can be made. One farmer is saying, no, you can't put it through my field. And the landowner who gave us the land for our garden is trying their best to bring the walkway next to us. But we do want to grow food on a more commercial scale in the Killearn site and sell on NeighbourFood, our market. And between the two sites, Drimmen and Killearn, we have the ambition of donating 20% of our produce to emergency food provisions. So food banks, although food banks don't operate in the same way in this rural area. You know, it's not one building that people go to collect their food. It's a few households have been identified as requiring support, and it's all very kind of, it's all anonymous really as to, so I don't even know the people. I know there are, I think there's 8 households identified. I don't know who they are. We work with the COVID-19 response group who are linked in with Startup Stirling, and they've got the details. So they deliver food packages. So we'll pass food to them and they will deliver it to the households.
It's amazing.
So,
yeah. Sorry to cut you off. That's
okay.
That all sounds amazing, and thank you for letting us know. So you've effectively got a place, a growing space where you're inviting the community in on their daily routes to contribute and take what they need, and a fledgling commercial market garden essentially as well, which will also support other needs too, which is amazing. Really interesting about the path as well. Really fits in with that 20-minute neighbourhood and getting out, not just in the car, but walking and cycling as well. So I'm gonna throw this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop recording so we can have a bit more of an informal chat and nobody will feel self-conscious. So I'm gonna stop recording now, and thank you all for coming. And after that, we can take any questions or thoughts or comments.